Please join me in welcoming award-winning journalist and contributing editor of The Hollywood Reporter, Stacey Wilsonette.
Good afternoon, everyone. Have you learned a lot today? That's not very enthusiastic. You have wine and snacks coming just a few more minutes. As she mentioned, my name is Stacey, and I want to toss to a wonderful video we have to showcase the incredible Fox series Accused. So let's take a look. Whoa, that was intense. It's a very good show. If you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's on Hulu. Let's welcome to the stage, starting with President of Fox Television Network, Michael Thorn. Head of Creative, Sony Pictures Television Studios, Stein. And creator, showrunner, and executive producer of Accused, Howard Gordon. Hello, everyone. So nice to see you, Howard. Many years since our last chat.
I had hair last time, but maybe with AI I can take care of that.
The miracles await. They really do. So Howard, you spoke to The Hollywood Reporter last year, my wonderful colleague, Lacey, and you said something to her that made me laugh, but also was very resonant, which is, I have really learned to shut up and listen in making this series. So because of that, I'm gonna start with these guys, okay? And you're just gonna have to sit and listen. This is an exercise for you. Lauren and Michael, what is inherently challenging about developing a series like this? It's not only a British adaptation, it's an anthology. And then Michael, why did you say yes? So start with Lauren.
I think one of the biggest difficulties is the anthology nature of it and the subject matter. And
definitely not escapist entertainment.
No,
right?
It's not. And one of the greatest things is that every episode gets you talking. It's also sometimes very uncomfortable. And there's a lot of discussion on them, on each episode, of what's too much, what's too far, what should we be talking about. And most of these episodes, you should be talking about them, even if they're uncomfortable. And I remember the first episode when we first saw it at Sony, and we were in a room with a bunch of people, and some people were really put off by it. And I said, but that's the response.
They were put off by what exactly? That's the episode starring Michael Chiklis and his son is possibly plotting a terrible act of violence.
Yes, and it's a story of a father who is very close on the edge of potentially killing his own son out of desperation, and then believing that his son has changed and turned a corner, and then his son shoots up a school. And Michael Chiklis' character is put on trial. And it's a heartbreaking thing, whether you're a parent or not. I think that episode was very indicative, of
And to be episode 1.
Yes.
Like out of the gate, you're not easing us into it. Like this is a real punch.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So knowing all that, Michael, the home of the Masked Singer, this is a very, very different product you're bringing to the landscape.
Yes.
Both exist in wonderful ways, but why did you say yes to this? It was a huge risk for you.
Yes, it was I'll start with the fact that we're a voice-driven company, and so it's always about who is going to tell the story, and we're in Howard's hands, and I've worked with him for many years. And it wasn't just only because it was Howard, but it was because when he came to pitch with Lauren and the Sony team about here's what he wanted to do with Accused, it was why it was so relevant to him personally as a storyteller. And within minutes of hearing him talk about it, was over Zoom because it was during COVID, we couldn't stop talking about the potential of episodes. And it was you hope as a buyer, seller, to hear a pitch that's electric, and as I was hearing the potential of these kind of morality plays and these kind of potential like controversial stories, my hands started to get sweaty, and that's the best place to be. And so kind of like The Masked Singer in a weird way, because that show's crazy, but we do our best at Fox is when we're out on the ledge. And so the question is, who are you going to hold hands with? In this case, it was Howard and his team. And then the other part about it is, in all the platforms, not just broadcast networks, but we're always looking for how do you reinvent close-ended storytelling, and particularly in a the crime genre, and a crime anthology is really, as bold as it is, it's the most simplistic way to approach close-ended storytelling. And then, last but not least, I think probably everyone in this room is here because we're looking for ways to pierce culture, and you can't pierce culture without reflecting it. And these episodes of season 1 and I think we're through 7 of the 8 now. Yeah, season 2 are just, they're so powerful. And I think like the episode that Lauren was talking about, the premiere of season 1, the trick, in my opinion, is that the way to introduce moral dilemma like that, where as a father, what do you do with the knowledge that your son may commit a school shooting, is to take it head on with an incredible actor, with Michael. It was an incredible script. Michael Cuesta did an amazing job directing it, but it was a thriller. So we explored this subject matter with an edge-of-your-seat thriller, and I think the show did very well. Season 1 did very well, but that episode, the one we spent hours debating, because we put it behind the NFC Championship game. That's how we premiered the show, and that was very polarizing. Are we going to put this episode with this subject matter behind what is the second biggest cultural American event behind the Super Bowl? And yeah, a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy, but we believed in it, everyone on the stage and everyone who's worked on it, and it was the right call.
I agree, and thank you for doing that. It shows a lot of guts. And Howard, how are you doing sitting there listening? Are you okay?
Well, Lauren, I'm not sure I buy the show you just pitched. So, but no, and it was really, first of all, I'm incredibly grateful for having had the opportunity, because for me, at this point in my life and in my career, this really was, look, we're living at a time, and I don't need to say why, but we're all, there's an anxiety out there. There really is something that is amiss, and for me, during the pandemic in particular, it was, I'm not going to say therapy, because again, that sounds kind of not very appealing for anyone else, but it was a way to work out a lot of the questions I have about what it means to be alive in the world today, and whether it's about class or race or.
But that was also a time we were talking a lot about community, helping each other. The whole notion of wearing a mask to help someone was very foreign to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Staying home and selflessly staying home to help someone.
Yeah.
A lot of people had a very difficult time with that.
And I hate the word it's thrown around, but for me it was actually very sincere. I really thought of it as an empathy engine. I thought it was a way to really tell stories that described how sort of excruciatingly vulnerable we all are. And, everyone doesn't sound like, it sounds like we want to open our, a vein, but there are some very funny episodes and some thrillers, and we do mix it up intentionally. We didn't want this to be something that, and to Michael's credit, I actually tried to bail out of that particular episode like 6 times. Writing it, I said, it's just too hard to write. I can't do it. And he said, and then he said, okay, we'll write whatever you want. And then he called me up a week after I'd started another script. He goes, can you just do that one? I can't get it out of my mind. And then it kept on going to the back of the line. And then he said, well, we won't lead with it. Don't worry, we won't lead with it. And then we'll lead with the thrillery one, the one that'll be, make it go down easy, and we'll, deliver the knockout one later. And then I get a call 2 weeks later, we're going to air it first. I can't get it out of my head. And to your credit, that really was, and it really, I'm very, very proud of the episode, and I think it really set the table that we are not afraid to go for it.
Well, and on that note, a lot of your work in the past, obviously 24 and Homeland, incredible pieces of fiction about America and the world at large. In both of those shows, you explored what I would consider flawed systems and the repercussions of flawed systems. And I was curious, in this series, what systems are you exploring? Because for me, this is your first major post-social media show, and those shows existed before this vitriolic presence has drawn us into this dark, dark place. But tell me about the systems that you want to expose, the flaws you're trying to expose. For example, episode 1, safety, gun safety. how we take care of our kids, like those are systems that are inherently broken in America. So tell me at large what you were hoping to explore.
Well, you put your finger right on it. It is, social media, the tech, in fact, we have an episode can I say the one this year? We have one coming up this year that actually is kind of Black Mirror-y in 5 seconds in the future. So it really is, there are these little morality tales and these little, and so for me, it was, I saw, that the flawed system is the human system, ourselves, how we do our best, and how a moment that either comes because of greed, because of bad luck, or jealousy. These things are potentially things that can bring us down, and I think I just feel like we have to have a little more compassion. And this show, I was hoping, I think Lauren and Michael said it, but my hope, and I think at the beginning of every show, I want there to be a contract with the audience. Like, why do I want to do this show? Who the hell wants to spend 7 days a week doing something? You better want to really do it. And I really wanted the audience to, such as they are, to really be stopped by the show and to think and to look, if they were not watching it on their iPhone, to look to the person next to them and say, wow, I need to talk about this.
And you never know what someone's going through in your life.
Right.
When you look around a room and you think, oh, I know who that person is, you have no idea what's going on with that person.
Yeah.
Lauren, I think it's safe to say Law & Order sort of created this amazing ripped from the headlines model that has worked so beautifully for that franchise. In what ways were you pulling from that inspiration but also creating a new rhythm to these episodes? And where are you sourcing these stories? Because they feel familiar to us, but you're obviously not ripping them from the headlines per se. So how are you sourcing the stories and also creating a great mix of stories?
I mean, I think with social media, as well as magazines, the news, whatever, you hear of all of these really crazy stories. Because we didn't want to do something ripped from the headlines, yet there is an element in almost every episode that is certainly in the zeitgeist. All of the issues that are dealt with, we didn't want to use specific cases, but you could point to, oh, I think that was similar to that story that happened there. And, Howard has always had a great group of writers that, because every episode is different, you can say to somebody, hey, what is something you really, really care about? Come to an episode. And I think that's...
And that was a strategy also with actors. And I think we've been we did promise things that I wasn't certain we could deliver. Because it did present marketing challenges as well. But it is the thing, if you're interested in writing it, you're hoping someone else will be interested in watching it, or the actors will be interested in playing it. And we had to really, with some good luck with that.
Right. It's like the ultimate crowdsourcing, right, for ideas.
I want to say one thing about, it's on the subject of see, this is why I learned to listen. It was a lie. I was premature. But the idea
you've done
is,
pretty well so
because I do think there's something about not, being adjacent to reality. Like, it approximates reality. And I think people think about things differently than when they read a news report or watch a documentary. There's something about the adjacent reality that reflects a deeper or different. You can approach things that sometimes are really difficult to do because...
I think the emotional resonance is what's different.
All right.
You don't feel emotionally connected to a news story, but you do to Michael Chiklis' character because you
Right.
think, what would I do,
What would I do? Yeah.
in this situation?
That's it. It's more about the emotional truth than borrowing from a really well-known, documented case, if you will, or crime.
And like changing the names, but it's
Yeah,
thinly
just
veiled.
changing the
right,
names,
right.
and it's been done so well. What I think is special about this is that it puts you in the shoes of someone who's obviously been accused of something, and does what you were saying, Stacey. What would you do if you had to make the choice that they had to make, and then and taking that type of storytelling, whether it's about a school shooting or fertility or one of our more other controversial ones about driving across state lines for an abortion. We have a range of stories, and season 2 we've expanded it, but it goes back to that character point of view where you just, no matter what they've done, you're emotionally connected to them, and you can almost see in my opinion, you can almost see why she or he made those choices.
Of course. And Michael, for you, I'd love to talk about audience engagement and the challenges, marketing specifically, when you don't have continuity of character each week. Because like Jack Bauer, we tuned in every week. What's he going to do on this given day, in this given hour of his life? So tell me how you approach that. And I remember seeing the key art was sort of a melange of faces. And that's also great. We're in this like White Lotus era of people love an ensemble. So we don't mind the sort of multiple faces, but how do you keep that going throughout the season as the characters shift and the artists shift, the writers, directors? It's really quite a challenge.
The marketing team did such an incredible job. When we greenlit the show, I think it was almost a year in advance of when we broadcast it. We ordered at the same time we were ordering the immediate season's programming needs. Howard had asked, he's like, I need time to make all of these scripts as good as I think it was 3 scripts that he had written to get the series greenlit. And so we took advantage of that time internally in talking about the variety of scripts. And once the cuts started coming in, when you could see how emotional they were, the campaign was built around those emotional stories. The scripts were so strong, we were able to get a real variety of familiar faces, which helped drive the campaign. But once the episodes started coming in, I think the marketing team, they really locked into showing each story as a blend and range of showcasing the show, and I think it worked really well. There was a lot, there still is, frankly, going into season 2, like, because of the strike, the show's been off the air longer than we'd like, and so we have to return it through the concept and the power of the storytelling, as opposed to Jack Bauer, and so, but yes, we're not the first to do conceptual cells like with American Horror Story or True Detective or White Lotus, where you're reintroducing it. But again, I think the marketing team had the same sweaty palms that we did when we were greenlighting and programming that first episode.
They really did.
But they did.
They're like, what have you done, Michael?
Yes, and
Initially.
Yeah, and I brought actually. And one of the things we did, now that I'm thinking about it, was I was like, you know what? Rather than hear me talk about it, is we set up, because again, it was around COVID, it was like the entire marketing, PR team, promo team, everyone who would touch the show beyond the content team, everyone involved at Sony beyond Lauren's team. We had this Zoom where Howard said, here's why I'm doing this show, here's what these episodes are, here's what it's going to feel like. And I actually think that was a big part of helping them, our marketing team, wrap their heads around it. And I'm so proud of the work they did, because I really think that campaign like nailed it, personally. And I think it really, judging by the ratings and the kind of the cultural conversation around the show, like it worked to get people in.
Absolutely. And Lauren, I'd love to talk about how you and Howard worked together to source the incredible talent that you brought in for each episode, writers and directors, and also making sure that people who are hired to tell these stories are bringing some cultural significance, personal experience, and all the things that we now know are imperative to telling these stories. And I'll never forget a conversation I had with Damon Lindelof when he was finding writers for season 2 of Leftovers, which centered on a black family in Austin, which was a total shift from season 1. And he said, I was trying to find writers, but my agency didn't have any to send to me. And of course, that seems like such a bizarre thing to say out loud, but he was frustrated that he didn't have access to send me a list of 50 people. Thankfully, things have changed, but you still have to really mine the depths of people's contacts to find the right people. So tell me how you worked together to do that.
Well, I think one of the greatest examples was the episode that Marlee Matlin directed.
Beautiful episode, yeah.
And, Howard thinks really big. And he'll think big and then be like, okay, now you guys figure it out. And, and it was a great challenge. And I think because of the stories that they were creating, it wasn't easy to get talent, especially for a first season show. But once you put somebody in a room with him, you can get whoever, that wants to come and play for a week. And
It's a nice short commitment too, which is
it
appealing,
is.
right?
It is. And so even more so this season is kind of pairing, whether it's an actor who also wants to direct or a writer from a specific culture who wants to tell a specific story. So then you hire the actor around that, you hire the director around that. And because we can shoot them in any order, you can find somebody who, okay, I'm only available in July. Well, then we'll figure it out.
It's a little like Wordle or like a Sudoku, because you have to find, it's really like landing planes at JFK at Christmas. It's like it's really a bit of a checkerboard, or a crossword is the thing I was fishing for.
Yeah, and he never has, people want to work with him, so I think we probably had more writers to choose from than we needed. And, again, it was a different, the writer's room was not a traditional writer's room. It was also during COVID, though, but you weren't breaking a season traditionally, since they were all different.
Howard, to what degree do you think the pandemic affected the show becoming what it became? Because everything you're describing, the isolationism that we felt, the like heightened emotions, grief, people losing relatives. I mean, it's terrible, but it also seems like the perfect fertile ground from which a show like this could grow.
Again, it really had everything to do with it. Because think of all the things, I mean, the world has changed, it tilted on its axis, and it's not like it's righted itself. It seems to be going in that direction. I mean, it's, I did start my pitch with the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. And that is the mantra for the show. And but I will say, just from a cultural perspective, we got to take some really big swings from Marlee Matlin, who would have thought during the pandemic, a deaf director, the first time, I think it's the first.
Yeah.
It was her first.
Well, her
directing.
a first-time director, a director who is deaf. I think it's the first episodic thing directed by a deaf person. But who thought, and during a pandemic, just to make it interesting, in 7 days, and not for a lot of money. And so, but who knew that you'd have to buy 10,000?
There was subtext there.
There was a little subtext, but I love
here.
the challenge of doing it for. I mean, I really thought it was a show that could be done but I was going to get to the idea of the masks, clear masks.
You needed
Who'd
clear
have thunk?
masks.
Clear masks, 10,000 of them. I didn't know they made them, but now I do.
And isn't that amazing, that what we learn about culture, and also to see Coda win Best Picture around this same time? It's really just
I'll
an
tell you,
amazing
it
alchemy.
was exhilarating for me, like Billy Porter. Again, he had done one, but and so what he didn't. What he didn't bring in terms of experience, he brought with such, and I hate to use the word authenticity, but I don't know what else to say about it. He brought such
lived experience
energy
for
to
him
it.
too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So because this is a room filled with people who hear pitches and do pitches, I would love to know what you think was the secret sauce outside of you being Howard Gordon, the illustrious Howard Gordon. How did you sell this show? How did you convince these people who, this is a scary thing to pitch. How did you ultimately convince them?
These people?
Yes, these people.
Well, I mean, the process was simple. Lauren obviously had the underlying. This was based on a Jimmy McGovern series, and again, I got to look at it, in my opinion, like a first draft. Like, what did the British show do? That I happen to be a great fan of Jimmy McGovern's, but frankly, I got David Shore's Leftovers. I mean, he was busy with The Good Doctor and had developed it once before, and Lauren sent it to me and said, "Does it interest you?" And it did right away. I said, "Don't give this to anyone else. I'm doing this," and I really felt, I was, and I continue to be really passionate about the show. And I think the show has its own kind of momentum now. I don't think I have to push it as far up the hill, because I think one actor was telling another actor, we've got incoming calls this year from people who wouldn't return our calls last year. So
Love it when that happens.
and everybody had such a good time. Like, there's no number one. Every time it's a new deal, so the energy that comes from people coming together for the first time is something that translates on the screen.
And Michael, what can you tell us about season 2 in terms of casting and timing?
We're going to premiere in the fall. Very exciting. And then like Howard was saying, we've gotten an incredible response, and actually more incoming calls than we can use, because each story comes. One of its strengths is that it's because each story comes from such a specific point of view. We have to match that signature role with the signature actor. But so far this season, we've cast Felicity Huffman, and she's going to be in an episode with her husband, Bill Macy.
Obviously, Felicity has a great sense of self and humor to put herself out here in this way, so just acknowledging
I think
that.
Lori Loughlin broke ground on Curb.
Laura, she did.
Yeah.
After that, everything's.
She went the Curb silly route, and Felicity who's an amazing actor, and it'll be great to see her working again.
We've been dying to work with her. We've talked quite a bit about kind of, both weird to reference both of these in the same sentence, but American Horror Story and the Disney Channel both use, they kind of have like a repertory of people that they use, and so we've kind of talked about doing that with this show. Like Michael Chiklis's role is completely, it's on the opposite end of the spectrum than he played last season, and he's really excited about returning again as an actor. And so it's, and I think we have a couple.
Well, that's only 4. We only have 4 shows that we've been out, so we have another. It's an 8-episode order, so we have 4 more. That's just in the first batch.
Yeah.
And then Lauren, again on the pitching topic, pitching has become very difficult. A lot of them are virtual. There aren't as many of them. What is one thing that you would tell a writer, series creator, when they come into the room, whether it's in real life or virtually? What is something you would tell them to avoid doing, to either not make you mad or piss you off or irritate you? Someone like you in your position. What's the biggest mistake to avoid?
The biggest mistake? Not being prepared.
It seems pretty obvious.
It does, but it isn't always. And I think you can have a really good pitch. If you don't know beyond that first episode, that's a problem.
A great idea does not equal good pitch.
Exactly. And a great idea doesn't necessarily equal a good show. Not that you have to have your entire series planned out, but if you don't know what episode 6 is, or you don't know how the season ends, that's a problem. I mean, this is a little different because there's no serialization to it. But I do really think it's just in any job that you do, you want to know it inside and out. You want to walk in there and own it. And pitching is not easy. And for a lot of writers, like, that's not their medium. Their medium is to write. Right. And so they're putting themselves out there. And so that's why I like, before we do anything, that it's bulletproof, so that the writer feels comfortable. Zoom is weird, but I think we've all really gotten used to it and embraced it. And if something's going awry, you can text somebody during it and be like, okay, just stop talking.
That's true, or the manager or agents listening just saying, stop saying that.
Yep. You be quiet.
That's actually a good bonus to virtual I hadn't thought of.
It is.
That is priceless.
True, and then you can also talk about, if you like it,
Yeah.
what do we want to say on the Zoom, and if you don't like it, you can say,
We have a
"What's our
meeting
next
in 5 minutes.
But I will add that in the first 5 or 6 minutes if you're buying the pitch, every time. I mean, maybe 99% you know, and when people are pitching, if you have, my advice would be early on in the pitch is why this project for you, and that personal theme ideally mirrors the theme of the show. And if you can put yourself in how the show is going to thematically go forward, the same for a drama or a comedy, you will have the person because it's your story, and then the buyer will have to have you. And that is, if you don't personalize it, then it doesn't matter. And truthfully, on Accused, that's exactly what Howard did. Is he was like, I have to tell you about why I want to do this, and it was a very personal story about he connected to his son, and literally we were like Lauren, we were texting. I'm like, what's the size of the commitment? How are we going to be preemptive to take this off the table? And we talked for like an hour, and it was great, but we knew instantaneously that we had to have it. And that's that personalization. It's hard because you have to do it economically, but
So the first 5 minutes are everything. That's the takeaway.
The first two or
First
three.
two.
Don't go too long.
Don't go too long.
oh yeah, the attention span, if you think about it.
Yeah.
This is the attention span of a normal person is 21 minutes. So you should be able to go in, say hello and goodbye and and talk about what your show is. And in that time, if there's questions, we will ask. And if you don't get any questions, it's either that good or it's not going to be,
We have a meeting. We need to talk about it.
Or you're hungry and really need to get
But
lunch.
just, you should, like, think about how much attention span you have, and so you should be able to convey it really, really briefly, and then let the conversation about it make the meeting longer.
That is brilliant. And we are, speaking of time, we are out of time, but Howard, I can't have you on the stage and not ask, 24 reboot, is it happening when? For Hulu, would it be broadcast? Do you have any updates?
I might.
That's promising.
But no, I mean,
Okay.
I hate talking about it because it's true. This has been the question that has dogged me.
Well,
but
obviously.
I miss Jack Bauer. I do. I miss
We
him.
miss him too. He's the hero we need
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, and we're talking.
Okay,
The
that's
conversation's
promising.
happening.
Okay. On that note, thank you everyone on the stage. Congratulations on the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much.